Welcome to the deep dive. Ever wonder how something as fundamental as a building, the structure itself, can actually help us tackle big environmental challenges? Today, we're diving deep into one really interesting angle, how the design and location of our buildings can significantly cut down on transportation-related pollution. We'll be exploring some of the key strategies outlined in the LEED plus C, new construction V5 framework, that's building design and construction for new builds specifically. We want to see how we can encourage more sustainable ways of getting around. And hey, if you're fascinated by this world of sustainable practices and want to hear more deep dives like this, please do subscribe.
Exactly. And the core idea here within LED anyway is something they call transportation demand management, or TDM for short. Its aim is pretty straightforward, really, to lessen our reliance on cars. Think about it, less pollution, obviously, less pressure on land for, endless parking lots, and ultimately healthier, more vibrant communities because people aren't just stuck in traffic all the time.
Okay, TDM. So to actually get a handle on a building's transportation impact, the framework mentions a transportation demand assessment. What does that look like in practice?
Right. It's essentially a way to measure and understand the transportation habits linked to a specific building. So this involves estimating the total miles people will likely drive to and from the building each year.
Okay, the VMT vehicle miles traveled.
That's the one. Then figuring out the carbon emissions that come with that VMT. And then crucially, looking at how low carbon options, biking, transit, walking, could change that picture. The assessment calculates the potential reduction in emissions if you implement these alternatives.
Ah, I see. So it's a way to quantify the benefit of making those greener choices for that building?
Precisely. It gives you a baseline and a target.
That gives us a baseline then. Now, you mentioned LED, and I see some projects don't actually need to do this full assessment. Why is that? What are the exemptions?
Yeah, there are a few situations where it's waived. First, if a project is already part of a government program, local or regional, that actively manages transportation demand.
So if they're already doing TDM elsewhere.
Exactly. LED recognizes that effort. Also, affordable housing projects in already developed urban areas, what we call infill locations, they're often exempt too.
Why them specifically?
Well, the thinking is that these areas typically have better access to existing transit and walking infrastructure already. It's sort of baked in.
Okay.
Similarly, if an office or maybe a mixed-use residential or retail project is in what's called a transit priority area.
Meaning it's really close to good public transport.
Right, very close. Or even just within about a half-mile walk that's 800 meters of a major transit stop existing, or even one that's planned and funded, then they're also kind of off the hook for the full assessment.
Because the location itself is doing a lot of the heavy lifting for sustainable transport.
Exactly. The location itself is a key TDM strategy in those cases.
Makes perfect sense. So, assuming you do need to implement strategies or you want to earn points, the LE framework lays out options. Up to 4 points, I see. Let's start with parking. That feels like a really central piece of the puzzle.
Oh, absolutely. Parking is huge. Option 1 tackles it directly. And there are actually two different paths here. The first path is, well, pretty straightforward. Just reduce the amount of parking you provide. Simple as that.
Reduce it compared to what, though? Is there a standard?
Yes, it's based on data from the Institute of Transportation Engineers, their parking generation manual. It's a widely used resource. It tells you generally how much parking different building types typically need, or at least typically have. LED uses this as the benchmark.
Okay.
So you can earn points depending on how much you reduce your parking below those typical requirements. A 30% reduction gets you 1 point. Go further, 60% reduction, that's 2 points. And if you manage to provide zero parking, 100% reduction, you get the full 3 points for this path.
Wow, zero parking. That's quite a statement for many types of developments. What's the thinking behind pushing it that far?
Well, it really challenges the sort of default assumption that every building must have ample parking right next to it. By drastically cutting or even eliminating parking, you're sending a clear signal that other ways of getting there are the priority.
Right.
Plus, it frees up valuable land for other uses, green space, maybe more building footprint, amenities, and you avoid the environmental costs of building and maintaining huge paved areas like increased stormwater runoff and heat island effect.
I can picture how different a city center could feel with much less surface parking.
Definitely. Now, the other path under parking, path 2, is about parking fees.
Okay, so instead of reducing supply, you manage demand through cost.
Exactly. This path lets you earn 2 points if you implement a parking fee daily, monthly, or maybe annual that's set at or even above the local market rate for parking.
So no subsidized parking.
Right. The idea is to make the decision to drive and park a conscious financial one. When parking isn't seen as free or just included, but has a real market cost, people are, much more likely to seriously consider alternatives, taking the bus, biking, walking.
It internalizes the cost of that space. Okay, so
Yeah.
making parking less available or making it cost more, both strategies designed to nudge people towards other options. Now, let's shift gears to option 2, active travel facilities. This sounds like it's focused on making biking and walking easier and more attractive.
That's precisely it. This option offers up to 3 points, again through several different paths, all aimed at supporting active transportation. Path 1 is all about providing a good bicycle network nearby and enough secure storage for bikes.
What makes a bicycle network good according to LED?
It needs to connect to the building site, be contiguous, so no major gaps, and at least 3 miles long. It can be made up of different things: dedicated bike paths, marked bike lanes, multi-use trails, or even just streets with lower speed limits, say 25 miles or less.
Sidewalks, too.
Only if local rules specifically allow bikes on sidewalks, which isn't always the case. And interestingly, they also allow you to count planned networks, as long as they're fully funded and scheduled for completion within 3 years of the building being occupied.
That encourages thinking ahead.
It does. And there's a specific point for schools. They need dedicated bike lanes that go right from the student bike parking area all the way to the edge of the school property. Safety for kids is paramount there.
Absolutely crucial. Okay, so that's the network connection. What about the storage itself?
Right. Storage is key. There are different requirements for short-term and long-term. Short-term is mainly for visitors. It needs to be pretty close, within 600 feet of a main entrance. The number of spaces depends on the building type: commercial, retail, schools. They all have slightly different minimums based on peak visitors or square footage.
And long-term. That's for employees or residents.
Yes, for the regular building occupants, that needs to be even closer, within 300 feet of a functional entry. Again, minimum numbers vary often a percentage of occupants, like 5% for commercial or maybe per dwelling unit for residential. Schools and healthcare have some specific rules and exclusions here too.
It seems quite detailed.
It is. And one interesting point is about shared mobility, things like bike sharing docks or public bike racks. If those are close enough within the required distances and occupants know about them, they can actually count for up to half of the required storage spaces.
So integrating with existing city infrastructure.
Exactly. And importantly, short-term and long-term storage requirements are calculated and tracked separately. You need both.
So it's clear it's not just about sticking a couple of bike racks in a basement somewhere. It's a more thought-out approach.
Definitely. It needs to be convenient and secure to really work.
Okay, what's the next path under active travel facilities to earn points?
Path 2 is about something that can be a real game changer for encouraging active commuting, providing shower and changing facilities.
Yes. If you bike or run to work especially.
Absolutely. A project can earn a point by providing these facilities on site for at least 1% of the regular building occupants. Or, alternatively, if there are suitable facilities available off-site, but very close within a quarter-mile walk. And for bigger buildings with lots of occupants, there are tiered requirements to make sure there are enough showers and changing spaces to meet the likely demand.
That seems like a very practical requirement. It removes a major barrier for people.
It really does. It makes cycling or running to work a much more feasible option for many.
Okay, and the last path in this section, bicycle maintenance.
That's right, path 3. For 1 point, the project needs to provide a permanent, secure bicycle repair station. This should be located within the long-term bicycle storage area. And it needs to have a decent set of essential tools: wrenches, screwdrivers, tire levers, plus a securely mounted air pump.
So basic DIY repairs on site.
Exactly. It just makes it easier for people to keep their bikes in good shape, handle a flat tire, minor things that could otherwise discourage riding. It further supports cycling as a reliable choice.
Okay, so we've covered reducing parking, maybe making it cost more, and then actively supporting biking and walking through networks, storage, showers, and even maintenance. You can really start to see how these different strategies work together, can't you?
Precisely. They aren't really meant to be seen as isolated efforts. They build on each other. The goal is to create an environment, an ecosystem almost, around the building where choosing sustainable transportation feels like the easy, convenient, and attractive option.
Rather than the difficult one.
Right. By tackling the things that make driving alone easy or cheap, and at the same time boosting the appeal and practicality of alternatives, you can genuinely shift transportation habits.
And it strikes me that the benefits aren't just environmental, are they? We're also touching on potential health benefits for people, and maybe even cost savings.
Absolutely. That's a huge co-benefit. When people walk or cycle more, even just part of their commute, there are direct positive impacts on their physical health,
Really?
mental health too, potentially.
Sure.
And economically, if people can rely less on owning and driving a car or maybe a second car, the savings can be really significant. Think about gas, insurance, maintenance, parking fees. It all adds up.
Those are real, tangible benefits that directly affect the people using these buildings every day.
No doubt about it.
So it's clear the LED framework provides a really thoughtful, structured way to minimize the transportation footprint of our buildings. It's about embedding sustainable transport right into the design and operation, not just treating it as an add-on.
Yes, it forces a consideration of how people will actually get to and from the building. And what's fascinating, I think, is to consider how these specific building level strategies connect to the bigger picture. Broader urban planning, city infrastructure, and even our own individual choices, which leads to a really interesting question, maybe something for you, the listener, to think about. Considering these LED strategies we've discussed, reducing parking, boosting active travel, what other creative or innovative ways could city planning, or even just the choices we make daily, further push sustainable transportation forward in our communities?
That's a great question to ponder. Definitely some compelling points to consider there. And if you found this discussion interesting and want to explore more about this fascinating world of sustainable practices in building design, please do make sure you subscribe to The Deep Dive. We'll have more in-depth discussions coming your way.